it today, Lesson 25. The first page of your Lesson 25 booklet, page 289, looks back to Lessons 18 and 19, along with some other points raised in earlier lessons. As usual, read through the text, repeating the exercises you're asked to play, and try to answer the questions as best you can. Then switch on the tape again, and we'll give you the right answers. So here we go with the first question. The dominant is the 5th degree of the scale. So in the C major scale, it's G. In the F major scale, it's C. And in the G major scale, it's D. In fact, the interval between the tonic note of a major scale, the note that gives the scale its name, and the dominant, is a 5th, the perfect 5th that you were introduced to when we were talking about how chords are made. It's quite a good idea to memorize some of the 5ths so that you can identify one immediately without having to count the distance between the notes. For instance, try to remember C to G, D to A, E to B, F to C, G to D, A to E, and B to F sharp. These are all intervals of a 5th. Now, to return to our quiz. The leading note is the 7th degree of the scale. So in G major, it's F sharp. In B flat major, it's A. And in D major, it's C sharp. The easiest and quickest way of picking out the leading note is to think of it as a semitone below the tonic, looking at the scale upside down, as it were. Before we go on to the rest of the lesson, just a word about exercises 207 to 215. As you'll have found, these are exercises in playing legato thirds. There's no question that legato thirds are one of the trickiest things you've run into in this course, which is why we're suggesting that you practice them for perhaps 10 minutes or a quarter of an hour a day for a few days in a row. Remember to try to keep your hands completely relaxed, and listen to make sure that when you play each third, your 2 fingers strike the keyboard at exactly the same time, perfectly together. The same is true of playing legato thirds as of all the other keyboard techniques, playing scales and arpeggios, or using the thumb-under technique, for instance. They just can't be picked up in a day. Gradually, with experience and practice, your technique will improve, and you'll grow in confidence and accuracy. It may seem slow at times, but you will make progress with every week and month that passes, as long as you play your keyboard instrument regularly. It's as certain as night follows day. Now, some new exercises for you, designed to develop those nimble, independent fingers you need for playing accurately at speed. Exercise 268 is for both hands together, but begin by practicing with each hand separately, concentrating especially on the left. Work up your speed gradually, starting as slowly as you need to get the notes right. And pay careful attention to the fingering. Exercise 268. You'll have noticed that we didn't play the repeat that was marked for that exercise. Don't let it worry you that sometimes we play the repeats on the cassette and sometimes not. Our decision is based on whether or not we think it's useful for you to hear the piece twice. But in principle, you should always play the repeats as marked. In the next exercise, number 269, you'll hear the first section repeated, but not the second. As we said, you should play all the repeats. And in fact, it might be a good idea to repeat each bar several times before going on to the next. It's important in this exercise that you stress the first of each group of 4 semiquavers, the semiquaver that comes on the beat. And, as usual, follow the fingering carefully. Exercise 269. The solo piece for this lesson, an air by Haydn, is in A major, so look out for the 3 sharps in the key signature, F sharp, C sharp and G sharp. You already know that the instruction at the beginning, allegretto, means quite lively. And you know how to deal with the sort of repeat you find on the first page of the piece, playing the bar marked 1 the first time through and going straight on to the bar marked 2 the second time. Most of the left-hand part is in triplets. Remember to count these bars 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But when you come to a bar without triplets, change your counting to 1 and 2 and 3 and... Whatever you do, keep the basic 3 beats to the bar regular throughout, whether there are triplets or not. Before we hear the piece, there's just one point about the fingering. In the right-hand part, in the 4th bar of the second page, page 293, there's a C sharp played with the 4th finger, followed by a B played with the 5th finger. You don't have to twist your hand about awkwardly to play this. When the C sharp minim has almost lasted its full length, lift your hand from the keyboard and move it across so that your 5th finger is in position to play the B in good time. It's as simple as that. So now let's hear Air by Haydn. We'll give you 5 metronome beats to come in. The usual 3 for a piece in 3/4 time, and 2 for the missing first 2 beats of the first bar. In the last lesson, you practiced playing simple arpeggios spread across 1 octave. Now, if you're going to move on to play arpeggios across 2 octaves or more, you'll have to use the thumb-under technique to go smoothly up or down the keyboard. In fact, thumb-under isn't all that easy to apply to arpeggios. It needs a supple thumb and wrist and a fair amount of stretching of the fingers. So we've got together a series of preparatory exercises for you on pages 294 and 295, and we won't go on to the arpeggios themselves until the next lesson. It has to be said that these exercises aren't enormously exciting, but they really are worthwhile. Think of them as a sort of challenge, a set of physical exercises designed to get you into shape, ready for the real thing when you meet it. If you look at exercise 270 for the right hand, you'll see it has two sets of fingering, thumb and fourth finger and thumb and third finger. All the bars work on the same pattern, so we can take the first bar as an example for them all. You begin by playing a C with your thumb, and then hold it while you play 3 quaver E's with your third or fourth fingers. Then you hold the E with that finger while playing 3 quaver G's with your thumb. Obviously, this forces you to bend your thumb inwards under your hand. You'll have to turn your wrist as well, especially when you're using the fourth finger for the held note. Because it's more difficult with the fourth finger, it's best to start by using the 1-3 fingering and then move on to the 1-4 version afterwards. Remember, you must keep the minims held down for their full value while you play the quavers in between. Here's what exercise 270 should sound like. Exercise 271 is identical, but for the left hand instead of the right. Exercise 272, for the right hand, deals with the other half of the thumb-under technique, sliding the fingers over the thumb. If you look at the first bar, you'll see that the thumb holds a G, while the fourth finger plays the E below it, and the second finger plays the B-flat above it, in a series of quavers. So you first have to slide your fingers over your thumb to play the E, and then slide them back again so the second finger can play the B-flat. You'll find you need to turn your wrist a lot and stretch your fingers to reach the notes without taking your thumb off the keyboard. It's really quite a gymnastic effort for your hand, so don't be surprised if you find it tiring at first. Here's exercise 272. Exercise 273, the last in this series, is basically the same as exercise 272, except that you don't hold the note with your thumb. Instead, you play it twice in each group of 4 semiquavers. It's important to get the semiquavers to flow as smoothly as you can, even if it isn't easy at first. And by the way, do follow the fingering exactly as it's written. Of course, there are much easier ways of playing these notes, but that would defeat the whole object of the exercise, which is to prepare you for playing arpeggios in the next lesson. Here's exercise 273. In the last lesson, we asked you to try to work out the chords on the first 6 degrees of the F major, D major, B flat major, A major and E flat major scales. You can see the correct chords on pages 296 and 297 of your booklet. The trick, of course, is not to forget the key signature. It's worth having a good look at the chords for each scale and playing them through to yourself. When you've finished, you might like to close the booklet and just try finding chords on the keyboard at random. The chord on the 3rd degree of the F major scale, the chord on the 6th degree of the D major scale, and so on, until you feel you really know the chords by heart. Exercises 274 to 278 will let you play a chord sequence in each of the keys we've mentioned: F major, D major, B flat major, A major, and E flat major. In each case, the sequence of chords is the tonic, the chord on the 1st degree of the scale, the submediant, the chord on the 6th degree of the scale, the supertonic on the 2nd degree, the dominant on the 5th degree, and back to the tonic. Every part of each exercise should be played first with the right hand and then with the left. Here's exercise 274 in F major, starting with the F chord in the root position. On the electronic instrument, you should hold the notes in common between one chord and the next, changing fingers on the note wherever you need to. This is what the same sequence sounds like on an electronic organ. For F major, we've written out sequences beginning with the tonic chord in its first inversion and in its second inversion, as well as the original sequence starting with the tonic chord in the root position. Here's the sequence beginning with the first inversion. And here it is, starting with the second inversion. Exercise 275 is in D major. Here's the sequence beginning with the tonic chord in the root position, as shown in your booklet. Try to put together the sequences beginning with the first and second inversions of the tonic chord, D major, for yourself. And remember to play everything with the left hand as well as the right. Now here's exercise 276 in B flat major. Again, in this exercise and the two that follow, make up the alternatives, beginning with the first and second inversions, for yourself. Here's exercise 277, with chords from the A major scale. And finally, exercise 278 in E-flat major. Our piece with backing orchestra for this lesson is the Prelude in C from Bach's Well-Tempered Clavier. You can, in fact, play it as a solo piece if you want. Our backing arrangement gives it a more modern flavour, which may not be to everyone's taste. The Prelude isn't a difficult piece to play, once you've grasped how the basic pattern of notes, repeated throughout, actually works. So let's take a look at the first bar. Or rather, at the slightly altered version of it that we've picked out for you in a box at the top of page 298. You can see that in this version of the first bar, all the notes are semiquavers, shared between the two hands. Now look at the actual music. The notes in the left hand are no longer semiquavers. There are now two parts, one consisting of a minim, and the other, a semiquaver rest, followed by a dotted quaver tied to a crotchet. At first sight this looks more difficult, but really it isn't at all. In fact, you play the left-hand notes as if they were semiquavers, but instead of releasing the keys, you hold them down through two whole beats until the next pair of left-hand notes takes over. It sounds like this. As we've said, the same pattern repeats itself right through the piece. You'll soon get the hang of it. Before we hear the prelude, we'll just look at some words here you haven't met before. At the start of the music it says andante sostenuto. Andante you know as slowish, but sostenuto is new to you. It means sustained, and indicates that the music is to be played smoothly and with a full tone. In the last 4 bars of the piece, you're told to play the left-hand part an octave lower than it's written. The word sotto means below. But you probably won't be able to do this if you have an electronic instrument instead of a piano. If you do play these bars an octave below in the left hand, play the right-hand part an octave lower than it's written as well, where it's indicated in the third to last bar. Finally, you'll notice that some of the chord names under the music have dim written next to them. This means diminished, and tells you that this is not the usual chord, but a diminished version of it. We'll be explaining about diminished chords in due course, but for the moment you don't need to worry about them. Just play the notes as written. So now, here is Bach's Prelude in C, with keyboard and backing. to end this lesson. Here it is without the keyboard part.